Hey everybody, welcome to the Hanger Bud Show. My name is Michael Sawyer and I look forward to talking to you about how to make money as a flight instructor. In today's episode, that's exactly what we're going to talk about. And I have a clipboard here, as I always do when I do these episodes. This keeps me on track and keeps me from rambling. There's always a little bit of rambling, but the key here is to just have a discussion about flight instruction, ways to make money as an independent flight instructor, ways to select a school to build time and hours as a flight instructor. And we're going to go over a lot of stuff today. We'll try to keep it very short and concise, but we may go off into other discussion and just kind of theorize and talk about other things. So, like I said, in today's episode, we're going to talk about how to make money as a flight instructor. There's typical ways that people think about, and then there's unconventional ways, and we'll talk a little bit about both. But this is ideally, like I said, we're going to touch base on people wanting to go to a flight school and build time, or get a commercial pilot's, do commercial pilot jobs, entry level stuff like pipeline and skydivers and surveying and stuff like that. And then we'll talk about like being an independent flight instructor, whether you do it as a side business to your main business or your main income or your main job, or whether you want to do it full time as a CFI, or whether you're a professional pilot by trade and you do a couple students on the side and teach a couple students. So we'll talk about independent flight instructor ways to make money as well. So I got a couple things right off the top we're going to get out of the way because it's very important that I make this very clear. No matter what you do, your dedication is going to be equal to what you get out of it. So I think most people who have gotten to the CFI license point know that it takes some effort to get to the CFI rating. Well, I hate to break it to you, but to get students to be a good CFI, you have to work hard at it too. And that's why it's important to love what you do, because if you don't like teaching people, I recommend you get a job building time. Like I said, flying skydivers, aerial survey, stuff like that, because you got to enjoy what you do a little bit, because you're going to have to work at it. So I want to just say dedication is equal to what you'll receive, period. That's period. It's in life in general. There may be some shortcuts here and there, but it's not long-term sustainable. You're not going to get stuff coming out of it long term. So if you're a CFI looking for students, whether you're an independent CFI or you're working for a flight school, you got to double down. You got to put in the work. You got to put in the unpaid time. It will come back and pay dividends. I guarantee it. Okay. I want to get that out of the way because we're going to talk about some things, and all this stuff is ways to do, ways to make money as a flight instructor, but it doesn't mean that you can sit on your butt necessarily and do nothing. We do have this kind of rolls right into our product here. We do have a product, hangerbuds.com. We create e-commerce stores for aviation professionals. We don't do it for anybody else. We especially want to do aviation customers because my background is in aviation, and we feel like there's a niche here that needs to be solved or taken care of. And for the flight instructor world, this is about as passive as it's going to get for income. Getting an e-com store to sell training products to your students. These are turnkey e-commerce stores, and they come loaded with over 1,000 products. We usually make a store in less than 24 hours for the CFI. There's no contracts, no commitments. It truly is a great way to add a little income to the top for you guys out there as CFIs, whether you're independent or flying for a school or whatever your situation is. Having a turnkey e-commerce store to sell aviation training products to your students is going to benefit you. And it's totally customizable. You can brand it to your name. You can brand it to a company name. You can brand it to whatever. But we made this because we feel like CFIs could earn a little bit more. And this is one way to earn a little more without having to work as hard. So there's my short plug. Let's get back to it. Two things as a CFI to make more money or to create more money as a CFI, and that is exposure and value. Exposure is pretty straightforward. You have to be known, right? Whether you're flying as an independent CFI or whether you're working at a flight school or whatever you're doing, you have to be known to your students and potential students. If you aren't known, then you're just gonna, if you're sitting back waiting for students to fall in your lap, it's not gonna happen, or it's gonna trickle in. A lot of CFIs want to build time, and if you want to build time, you got to get hungry, you got to get out there, and you got to find students. And we'll talk about some ways to do that later on. Okay, and then value. This is all kind of looking at it from the business side. So I'm not going to talk about instructing like a CFI and talk about the tactics of instructing people. I'm going to talk about business ways to make money as a CFI. Excuse me. Value. Value is what you give to the student. I heard a guy say this once, and it's very true. I think it is. The market's going to pay you what you're worth in general. So the market of flight students are going to pay you as a flight instructor what you're worth. If you don't provide a good product, you're going to be at the lower tier of hourly pay. If you provide a great product, you're going to be at the higher tier hourly pay. And I know guys are sitting there going, well, I work for a flight school and they dictate my pay. Don't get into that habit of thinking like that. That's not a good way to think. You have to empower yourself and know that if you're a good instructor, you can ask for that raise. If you're a great independent instructor, you can charge more if you're doing valuable stuff for your customers. You can't be showing up late. You got to prepare for the lesson appropriately. You got to be consistent. You got to track your students' progress. It takes work. Just like I said, it takes time and effort to do these things. And that's why, honestly, I see a lot of CFIs. I used to be an owner of a flight school, and we've seen a lot of CFIs that, just half-ass it, pardon my language. They just don't put much effort into it, and they get in return what they put in. It's no doubt. And then there's the ones that do really well, and they hustle, they want it, and they end up, a lot of people that flew for our flight school, they were building time. So if you could tell if they were really wanting it bad enough, they would build time in a year or less and be out of there. And they were great people, and you establish the connection with them later on in life, or excuse me, if you do a good job as a CFI, you never know later on in life what a student that you taught, that you impacted, did a good job teaching them. It could turn into a lifelong friendship. You never know what could happen. So give it your all is all I'm going to say without rambling. As you can see, I can go off topic here pretty quickly. But okay, let's get back to it. So let's talk about the different ways to make money now. So the conventional way is teaching at a flight school. Teaching at that's one of the most conventional ways, right? Teaching at a flying club, teaching existing pilots in their aircraft, teaching ground instruction in person, teaching ground instruction via online or virtual, and simulator training. You can teach students in sims, FAA approved sims, and just get creative with how you can create income as a CFI. You got to sit down and think about it without, the phone and the computer and all that stuff, the internet. You can gather ideas from it, but it really requires you to sit down with a pad of paper and pencil and just kind of brainstorm. You can never underestimate brainstorming. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into the first area here of creating money as a CFI, and that is working for a flight school. There are a lot of different, and most people know that you can obviously build time, make money as a CFI at a flight school. What I want to kind of touch base on is the different flight school styles that I know of, and just to make sure that you as a CFI, if you go to pick a school, that you pick the one that's appropriate for you. The first step is to write down your goals as a CFI. If you're building time, it's going to be different than if you already have a job and you're just looking to do this part-time. Your school pick's could be different, and so I want to talk about that. I got basically two different areas of two different flight schools, what I categorize them in. And it's not 61 or 141 because I'm not going to get into reg stuff, but I'm going to classify the flight schools for a flight instructor to go work at as mom and pa flight schools and nationwide schools. So big schools, small schools. That's pretty much it. Before you go work for a flight school, make sure you write down your goal. right? If you're building time to go to the airlines, then and you want to get 1,500 hours in a year, then you need to write down 1,500 hours in 1 year and put it on your sticky note in your bathroom or wherever you get ready every day, so you reinforce yourself of the goal. These are common things. This is a easy old school tactic of really manifesting your reality. And that is just making sure you know your goal and make it very clear and defined. So a mom and pop school, you're going to want to ask how many CFIs they have, how many planes they have, because you want to know the CFI to plane ratio and full-time CFIs versus part-time CFIs. If you start getting above 4 full-time CFIs per plane, you're going to get into the issue of availability for you to schedule the plane to fly. So what I'm getting at here is you do not want an unfavorable CFI to plane ratio at the flight school. By the way, these are not hard rules. These are just things that operating a flight school I've learned and saw, and then I've worked for flight schools. I've been a mechanic for flight schools. I've owned a flight school I sold out of about a year ago, and I still help with that school and help the owner, and learned a lot. I've learned a lot about flight schools, so this is just my input, but you want to know the ratio, because I mean, as a flight school, the goal is, from the flight school's perspective, is to make a profit, but they aren't going to be able to do that if they don't train students. So they have to be good at training students. So back to what my point, get the flight instructor to plane ratio. Anything above 4, we always thought was not good, because we like to have enough instructors to fill up the schedule for a plane, but we didn't want to make it to the point where students weren't able to schedule times, or instructors. So 4 is really the max that we always considered. If we got to a point where we were maxing out a plane, 100 to 120 hours a month, when we hit that number and we were at a 4 to 1 plane ratio, 4 instructor to 1 plane ratio, it's time to get another plane. And so anyway, ask the mom and pa what the instructor to plane ratio is. The second question you want to ask is how many students they bring in every week or every month. It doesn't matter. You just want to know that there's a constant flow of students. If they get 1 student a week and they have 4 instructors, you're not going to build time. You're just not. Or you're going to be competing with the other instructors. And it's not like it's a big deal, but it's something you want to consider if you're building time. You've got the big schools like ATP out there, the nationwide schools, big universities, collegiate schools that get a lot of volume of students. And you're going to have a lot of opportunity at these schools to build time faster, but you're still going to have to stand out. And it goes back to me saying you got to put in the effort, the unpaid time, to show that you're willing to do the things that your other peers, your other CFIs aren't willing to do, so that you can get the time, the flight time in, whether it's building time, whether it's getting higher pay as a CFI, whatever. You got to put in the time. It'll pay back. It may not short term. Sometimes you may look at something and go, why am I putting this much work in? But it always pays off. It always does. And especially if you put in a lot of work and you're not getting acknowledged for it, whether you work for someone or at a school and you're not getting acknowledged, then sit down with the owner or manager and say, hey, I've been doing a lot of stuff I hope you noticed that I've been working hard to try to grow the school, and I'd really enjoy to talk about a pay raise, right? I'd like to talk to you about a pay raise. So but you got to justify it. You have to be able to put in the work to justify the pay raise. So questions to ask the school, the mom and pa school, is how many new students do you get a week? How many aircraft do you have in the fleet? How many CFIs do you have? And then how many hours a week or month are you currently flying? Like I said, 100 to 120 hours per plane is a good number that's a busy plane in my eyes. That means you're doing a 100-hour inspection on the plane every month. And typically maintenance has a hard time keeping up with that. But if you go to a mom and pop school and they fly, they have 4 planes, 16 instructors, and they're flying 200 hours or 150 hours a month. That's not that many hours per plane. There probably is an issue with the volume of students coming in the door, right? And you just want to ask those questions so that you have an idea of what the school's doing before you get in there. The stipulation to this would be if you have a school down the road from you, a mom and pop school, and you just need to get a job and they're right down the road, so it's not going to hurt you to just get on board on their roster and fly every once in a while. But if you're looking to move to a flight school, make sure you ask these questions. So that's to ask the questions for the flight school. And like I said, there's mom and pop and there's big schools. And the big differentiator between the small and big schools are you just got to make sure you do your due diligence on the mom and pop school, the small school, to make sure that they're flying enough hours that you're going to get what you want out of it. And you got to, of course, do what you have to provide value for the school. You can't just take, you got to give. And then with the nationwide schools, it's kind of the same thing, but a little more competitive, so you're going to have to stand out. That's the big thing with the nationwide schools. Put a resume in. Don't just put a paper resume in. That kills me. You know, as an employer of employees and running companies for the last 8 years, the person that we always hired was always the person who turned in an application, called, or showed up. And that's just us. I know not everybody's going to be like that, but the squeaky wheel gets the grease is the what I'm saying here. So don't just put a resume in and hope to get picked. Call them. Be hungry. You got to be hungry. If you want the job you want, you got to be hungry. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and say this before, there's a couple more things about flight schools before we move on to the next area of making money as a CFI. And that is, if the school, there's a couple things to check. One, do they have a career program? And that's easy to look up at their website. Basically, do they offer deferred financing for a career program for their students? Are they able to do a 0 to 9 month or 0 to career ready 280 hours program with their MEI? Or do they have a program that's a professional pilot program where the pilot can take out a loan, the student can take out a loan, defer all the cost until they get a job as a CFI and start making payments on that? If they have a program like that, it's a plus for you looking to build time. That is a game changer when it comes to flight schools, because one of the number one reasons of students dropping out is financials. And if you get a school that doesn't have that kind of program, then you're depending on what I called in our school, pay-as-you-go students. Students that had to pay as they go. Now, I'm not saying all the students didn't have money, but 5% of them had the money to buy everything, the private pilot license outright, and then the other 95% were like strapped for cash. So they'd fly 10 hours and be done. So what I'm saying is, I would prefer to go to a school, if I were a CFI, that to go to a school that has a career program. Full deferred financing, by that is what I mean. Okay. The location of the school is also important. I just wanted to say that before we move on. It's kind of obvious. If the school's in a rural area, then you got to for sure ask the questions of CFIs, number of planes, number of new students coming in per week, how many hours they fly per week, and then do they have a full deferred financing option for career students. If it's rural, you want to ask that stuff, because you don't want to get into a situation where you go to a rural area and don't get what you thought you were going to get. So, okay, let's talk about teaching at flying clubs. So we talked about the most common one, working at a flight school. Now let's talk about working at a flying club. Flying clubs can range from a small one plane operation with 8 members, or all the way up to I guess when I was out in Denver, there were some pretty big schools out there, and clubs. There was a couple big ones. I don't know how many planes they had. I never worked with them, but they were big, and they operated just like a school. So there's different sizes of clubs. Now, the clubs that are local to us here in the Des Moines area, I live in Des Moines, Iowa, are 1 to 2 plane. There's one club that's got 5 or 6 planes, but all these clubs operate on the CFI charging the student directly, right? And that's a huge benefit in my eyes, I think, for the CFI, because it gives you the freedom to charge what you want. Now, If you make yourself available, if you provide good value to the student, you can charge more. Even if you have 300 hours or 250 hours or 275 hours and you're a green CFI. If you're hungry and you go to the club and you make yourself available and you show up early and you plan the students' curriculum and you track their progress and you really want them to get their license, you can charge a little more. I'm here to tell you that. I can't tell you how many times professionals just lack in basic professional areas and therefore it looks bad, right? Don't look bad. So flying club's a little better in my opinion. Typically the flying club, I'm sure there's clubs out there that they pay their instructors a set rate, but the clubs in this area, the instructors get to charge what they want. And that's a huge plus, I think. So consider that when you're thinking about making an income. A lot of times these clubs will let CFIs join for free, the club, and there's no fees. You're gonna have to check each club out separately, the flying clubs, to see what their rules are, but you might want to put that on your list of ways to make an income as a CFI is to check out the flying clubs. And it's a deal where you can get 2 or 3 avenues of making money as a CFI. You can work for a flight school, you can get signed up with a club, a flying club, you can do a virtual ground lesson. If you do it right, you can build time quickly, you can make decent money. I'm not going to say like great money, but you can make, $80,000. This is 2023. Our top CFIs were making 60 to 80. They taught ground school as well, and we paid them very well for the ground school classes. They flew a lot. And so, you can make a decent living, and they were working all the time. And so it was a very hustle type environment, but it didn't take them but a year to gain their time and move on. So teaching at flying clubs. Let's talk about the third area here. So we have teaching at flying schools, teaching at flying clubs. The next one is teaching existing pilots with their aircraft. So not often thought about, but there are a lot of pilots out there that just need a good CFI to perform a BFR, or maybe they want to get an instrument rating or a commercial rating, or they're looking for their next rating. There's a lot of those guys out there. And in this area, if you want to expose yourself, remember the 2 areas as a CFI are exposure and value. Those are the 2 things you need to create if you want to create additional income, is to, I have on here, hustle, hustle, hustle. So you have to hustle, obviously, but you got to get creative and you got to expose yourself. And to do that, you just go old school, I think, in a lot of areas, and that is getting business cards, getting flyers, and don't get hung up on a professional looking flyer is great, but don't let it hold you up from the exposure. Meaning, if you just put something together, put it on the bulletin board, it's better than nothing. So don't let it hang you up. But business cards, they're super cheap. I use Vistaprint for all my business cards. But there's tons of places to get business cards. They're cheap. And then what I always got into was everywhere I went, if there's a bulletin board, I just put I put a business card up on it, right? It's the idea that you want to be everywhere on a budget. And so everywhere you could expose yourself, you take that opportunity. Business cards, flyers on airport bulletin boards around your area for these pilots that are coming in and out of the lobby, right? Barnstormers.com is a great aviation website that has a lot of traffic. So putting an ad out on Barnstormers. Obviously, Facebook is a great one. All the social media platforms are great ways to get out there. Make sure you select groups, right? And the right groups, the aircraft owners, and then don't, you say that you got a service, but if you're pushy and stuff, it's going to be hard. So don't just go blasting it out there. You got to be helpful for the people. And if you're marketing, shoving it down people's throats, it can come off as offensive. So FAA aircraft registry mailers. That is one that, I can tell you from experience, not a lot of guys do, but it's provided the most customers throughout all of our businesses in aviation. Like I said, I ran flight schools, I ran maintenance shops, I ran FBOs, and mailers in all the categories did well. And well, by that I mean you got to think about the money you invest in that marketing to what you get out of it. And mailers always did good for us. So there's the FAA registry is a free database where you can go and get aircraft owners, and maybe in another episode, it might be premium content. I don't know yet, but we'll talk about how to go to the FAA registry, how to make a mailer, how to do it right, and because we've done it so many times now. But what I'm saying is, you can go to the FAA registry, find out all the aircraft registered, the owners, the addresses. You can send mailers out saying, hey, I'm a CFI. If you need help, holler at me. Here's my contact information. Whether it's getting a new rating, a BFR, just give me a shout, right? Okay. The last one for like, and this is under the area of teaching people, honestly, hanging out, doing this stuff in every area is great. So if you're, you know, I guess let me back up and say this. Hang out at the airport lobby. So if you hang out at an area where your customers are, you're going to probably, it's simple. If you like hang out at the airport lobby more often than you don't, you're probably more likely to get more customers. And these airport lobbies are, you know, depending on how big the airport is, where it's at, it, you know, it just is a good idea to go there and sit down. For me, I work a lot behind a computer and clipboard, or excuse me, I do a lot of office work, I guess. And so go to an airport. If you do a lot of computer work, if you're whatever, you can sit down at a table in the lobby, get some work done. And then when, you know, a pilot comes in, if you hear him talking about flying, flight instructing, or that he's a pilot, he's got a plane and stuff, you know, it never hurts, because you never know when you might be able to talk to somebody that needs your services. Plus, if you're efficient, you'll go to the airport to put up one of your flyers, and then you'll hang out there for a little bit. And, you know, I always thought the flyers with the little tabs with the numbers on them, right? You could rip the tabs off and say flight instruction, and then it would have little tabs that have your number on them and your email and your name, and they could rip it off to keep it. That's super cool. So what I'm saying is, if you're efficient, you go there, put one of those flyers up, do some work at the airport, and then check your flyer to see if anybody pulled your tab. Okay, let's talk about the next area here. I want to keep moving so we don't make this a real long episode. But teaching ground school in person or virtually. This play is honestly like bang for your buck, the best. The issue is you have to get exposed to students. Let me take a drink of water here. Okay. Teaching ground school, if you already have flight students, it's simple, right? You're going to do some ground instruction with them. It's great. But let's say like you want to just start people off with ground. I can tell you right now that most of our people that came into the flight school and most of these students that are looking to start flight training have a lot of questions before they even hop in a plane. So one of the other benefits of a HangarBuds e-commerce store is we have an SEO page. And that SEO page that comes with the store is literally optimized to show up when people ask first-time questions, right? How to get a medical, how many hours does it take to get a private pilot's license, flight instructor near me, you know, all these search terms, we optimize the page to show up when they click that. So what I'm getting at is a HangarBuds e-com store is a great way to generate leads for low cost. But you gotta, the point here is that if you just want to start out like with ground instruction, you got to get your name out there again. So it's hustle, hustle, hustle. And what typically happens is like this, if you're a CFI that doesn't have access to a plane and you're just looking to make money, this is a great way to do it. Doing ground instruction, consulting with students, right? Like a lot of these students have questions and they need their answers. So like you can do an hour or two of ground with them, and you can schedule that with them. And it's a great opportunity for you to discuss, hey, if you have a HangarBuds e-commerce store, it's even better, because you can say, let's get you started with our private pilot kit, and then let's go ahead and start doing ground lessons, right? So it kind of flows nice and easy when you have a HangarBuds account or e-commerce store. Or if you have a website, right? If you go and make a website, which can take some time to make a professional website and SEO it, that's why we created the e-com store that's also a website so that you can just turnkey go. But long story short, a platform that exposes you 24 hours a day, right? 7 days a week. That's what a Hanger Buds account does. But a good website will do that too. Okay, so teaching ground school in person. Like I said, if you already have students, great, you can teach them. If you're looking just to go direct to students because you don't have access to a plane, that's where you got to go back to the FAA mailers is good because they do show student pilots that have gotten their medical. So a lot of these students may have gotten their medical but then dropped off on their training. So it's a good opportunity for you to send mailers out to them to say, hey, you know, where are you at with your training? Let's keep you going. Let's do what do we need? You know, I can help you with your ground. I can consult with you to keep you going. And, you know, this is worth something. You can charge an hourly amount for that. And you can always approach the school, the flying club. You can go to the airport even if it's a small airport, and you can say, hey, I'd like to host a ground class, and you can organize a ground class and get paid for that as well. Virtually, you know, obviously that's a huge, powerful tool, but it goes back to you can drown in opportunity because everybody, you know, it seems like, oh my God, doing this virtually would be the best thing ever, right? I could get so many students because it's all over the country and stuff, and that's true. There's plenty of opportunity to make money virtually teaching ground, doing ground training. The issue is that there's so much opportunity that you can get lost. It's hard to SEO. It's hard to get your name out there and stuff like that. And it takes a lot of work to get up there, often with paid ads and stuff like that. But like I said, creating a good website, marketing on social media platforms, and a Hanger Buds e-com store with the website that comes with it, that's great. This is all great ways to expose yourself to be able to do something like virtual ground schools. And then you can use Google Meet or Zoom, and you can teach students that way. You can put a class together of 15 students, you know, teach them online, and it's just a win-win. The only con to a virtual is that a lot of students like to do the in-person stuff because of the experience, but I still think that doing it virtually is a great way for students to have it conveniently be able to get their answers or get their ground school taken care of or their test prep for their FAA written test taken care of. You know, I think it's still a great tool for that. I really do. And I think that you have the opportunity to charge a little less too, to entice them to do ground school virtually, because you can add 10 students in on a lesson, or even 20 or 30 students on a virtual lesson, and you can charge less because you got more students in the class. Okay. The last topic we're going to talk about, and it's kind of a, let me check here, make sure. Yeah, okay. The last topic we're going to talk about is teaching in a sim. And this is kind of like your circumstances have to line up perfectly. But there's two ways you can teach in a sim. You can go to an entity that has a sim, whether it's a flying club, flight school, university, airport, whatever. And you can get hooked up with them to start teaching sim time there, make yourself available. Or you can buy your own, which I think is probably, not most CFIs are going to want to do that, but it is an option, you know, and there's plenty of simulators out there that are, I think there's quite a few under $5,000. They're not, and I forget BTAA and AATD. I've been out of the flight school. I sold out of the flight school about a year ago, so I kind of lost track with that acronym. But, you know, there's two categories, obviously. There's the lower category and the higher category of sims, and that gets you flight time, certified flight time. And the lower category one, the BATD, I think it is. I can't remember, but you know, it still applies time to your private and instrument and stuff like that, but they're lower cost. So you can go with something like that. Sometimes they're table mounted, so it's just like a screen and a couple controls. That's one way, you know, you can get a sim and start marketing that. And what I can say about that is with sim stuff, I'd almost prefer you go to an entity and talk to them about being a sim pilot. Maybe they have enough flight instructors to fly their planes. It could be one of those things that you go to a school, they're like, nah, we're not looking for instructors, but they have a sim, and you see they have a sim. You could say, hey, listen, I really want to work here. Can I start out in the sim to show you what I'm worth, and start there, right? You can start training the sim. That way you're not taking up their plane time and stuff. And that's how you can work your way into flying the planes. What I'm getting at, sim training is another option to make money as a CFI. And I think it's probably like one of the smaller areas to make money. I prefer that if you're a CFI, don't get a sim in a rural area. Don't go out and buy a really expensive sim if you're in a town of 5,000 people or 10,000 people or 20,000 people and expect to market it and make money, because your ROI, or return on investment, one of the best things you can do as a CFI, if you're looking to kind of do your own thing, is to look at your investment into whatever endeavor you're about to do and what's your return on it. With a sim, you have to have volume of students, right? If you don't have volume of students, your ROI is going to be 10 years out, meaning you're not going to get the money back out of the sim that you spent on the sim for a long time. So if you're in a metro, if you're in a big city, then it becomes better because you have more volume of students, right? So I almost advise that you go to an entity and work for them as a sim instructor to start, unless you really are adamant on making your own sim and kind of marketing that. You can do that. That's great. But just understand that your ROI, make sure you do a prediction of, hey, it's one of those things that you gotta, I can't tell you how to gauge how many students are in your area, but I can tell you this, that, we had 3 locations, and Des Moines, Kansas City, and Minneapolis for our flight schools. And we went to the metro areas because we knew that that's where we were going to get students. I had ran a school in a small little rural town of 5,000 people, and it failed. It was my first flight school I ran, and it failed. So what I'm saying is, from experience, just do an ROI. Make sure you do a calculation to find out a rough idea. I wouldn't put a sim and market it out unless I had a good volume of students coming in the door. So sim training. Oh, the other thing that could be done is if you have a computer, you can Planex or Microsoft Flight Sim, and it's not FAA approved. You can't teach students and build their time that way, but what you can do is do that. You can host a virtual event where you teach people, you pull up the Planex or Flight Sim and you kind of show them in a 172 pattern work. You can also bring people into a location like a coffee, I don't know about a coffee shop, if that's a good area, but in your house, or you can meet them somewhere and you could sit down with the sim. You have to have good intentions. You don't want to go at it like blindly and say, let's mess with the sim. If the student's struggling with, he's doing pattern work and he's a private and he's trying to learn how to fly, then the sim does well with learning procedures like just a computer with a screen like Microsoft Flight Sim or Planex. Them being able to take off, learn how to look at the gauges and scan in, scan out. You can tell them all this stuff on a thing like a computer with Microsoft Flight Sim. You can tell them, their airspeeds for the different legs, and it helps. You guys know as instructors, that's going to help. It's not going to be a negative for them. It's going to benefit them. And you can charge for that, right? You may not be able to charge as much because it's not building time for them like in their logbook, but it is going to get them so that when they do go sit in the plane, they remember a little more about speeds and downwinds and scanning the instruments and looking outside. They remember that more because they were doing it behind the screen. So, okay, let's wrap this one up. Those are the areas that I came up with on how to make money as a flight instructor. If you guys know of any more, obviously you can be a commercial pilot and make money in a lot of different areas, entry-level stuff, but we'll keep making episodes and content, and we'll discuss other things. But in this one, we kind of just wanted to cover those topics for making money as an instructor. And yeah, we appreciate your guys' feedback. We love to listen. So if you got any comments, just hit us up on our website, hangarbuds.com. This will be on YouTube eventually. So you can comment, like, or share it there. That's great. It helps us get our content out. And with that, we're going to wrap this episode up. So thanks for joining us.